Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Stuart Victor Echo 9 Charlie Foxtrot, and welcome to the POTA Performers segment of my channel here. And I bring in very interesting people, and this guy, he is very interesting. Let me tell you that. Everybody knows Simon, VA7BIX. Simon, how you doing, mate? Good to see you face to face. It's been a long time.
What a pleasure. Oh, it's great, mate. Thanks for having me on your fabulous show, buddy.
So tell me, what's been going on? I haven't talked to you on the air in a long time. What's been happening in your world?
Lots of things. I just mentioned to you a little earlier that I got recently, my channel got hacked again. So if any YouTubers out there or any people that are a little paranoid, like we all should be about online security, send me an email. Seriously, guys, I can walk you through. You know, if you're interested in YubiKeys or just some ideas of how to make our infrastructure or ecosystems a little more ironclad, if you will. So I've been working on that. Secondly, I've got a daughter in year 11, and you know, she's busy with school and all that stuff, and lots of jazz gigs and having fun out on the tricycle, playing a little bit of radio. But yeah, mate, it's just living the dream out here on the West Coast. What can I say?
Well, you know, that's great, and it's been awesome here on the West Coast, the East Coast. I'm getting all confused on the East Coast this year.
Yeah.
A little bit of ups and downs weather-wise. Like I said, yesterday was 28, 29 degrees. I was on the beach enjoying a beautiful evening on the beach. And today it's a balmy 12 degrees. So, you know, if that's the Canadian Maritimes weather for you, let me tell you.
I love it, mate. I just said to Stuart before that we used to say in Melbourne, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes kind of thing, right? Yeah.
So for the 2 or 3 people that don't know who you are, Simon, give us a quick introduction, who you are, how you got into ham radio, and, you know, give us the, I don't know how you say it in Australia. In Canada, we say the Coles Notes version, you know, the condensed version of your journey in ham radio.
Absolutely, Stuart. Well, g'day, mates. G'day, everyone. I'm Simon, Crazy Ham Jazz. And, yeah, so I'm an Aussie lost here in Canada. Those beautiful Canadian women, I should say Canadian woman. And I will say that as a bit of a stereotype or a cliche, I lived in Whistler for 13 years, and 3 of my best mates that were Aussies all married Canadian girls. So we call Canada is literally, it's a cold Australia, and Australia is a hot Canada. There's a real simpatico there, and I hear it time and time again. I do lots of gigs at various restaurants around town, and lots of young Canadian kids that go and work in Australia, and they go, "Oh my God, it feels like I'm home, but it's hot." And it's like, you know, and conversely, kids that are Australian come to Canada, same deal. So I've lived here now for nearly 27 years, which is great. Nearly married, 25 years in January, so that's great. So my background, so I grew up on a farm, basically 150 kilometres northeast of Melbourne in the state of Victoria. And so being a farmer all my life was with mainly wool, so sheep and some grain. And so my dad was a farmer, and my uncle was an electronics expert who happened to be also a ham radio geek. VK3BIX was his call sign. So anyway, back in the early 80s, we're talking, you know, like there was communications were pretty limited back then, and one of the main options for farmers was CB. And I never forget, my dad got a couple of CBs, one in the ute and one at the house, and I never forget. So it must have been, I reckon, probably about 1980, 81, somewhere around there. And I haven't actually looked back through the sun cycle to see where it was, but I'd turn on the old CB, or the cranky bugger as we'd call it in Australia, and put it on the sideband and hear these stations like Perth. You know, Perth is from Euroa. Euroa is basically northeast of Melbourne. 2,500 kilometres or 3,000 kilometres, the same distance to New Zealand. So I would hear Western Australia one day, the next day I would hear Queensland. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm hooked. This is the greatest thing ever. And I knew nothing about antennas. I'm talking about, we used to have like little, the 4 or 6 inch rubber duckies sitting on the ute. But that was basically it. And then I slowly over that got more exposed to ham radio. My uncle had some old receivers from World War II. Now, some of you are going to be asked, oh, do you remember what model? I don't, but I know that it was a big heterodyne, had the big knob with the BFO, and I remember with just a long wire. I used to listen to primarily 40 and 80 meters, and yeah, the rest is kind of history. And then, then just sort of evolved from there. And ironically, I was just thinking before, Stuart, when I first started getting into the world of, let's say, HF, CB, and also, here listening to ham radio, I didn't know anything about 20 meters, or I didn't know CB was 10 meters. And my Uncle Ian was always about the lower bands. And I knew nothing about 20 meters until I got to Melbourne, and I strung up, I was lucky to live down by the beach. I was able to string up quite a long piece of wire. And I made a dipole with my uncle's help for 20 meters. And every afternoon, I would hear the Gulfs coming in, the UK, long path. And I'm like, oh, my God, that's the UK. That's like, anyway, and then the rest is history. Then it wasn't until I moved here, and then 2012, I got my license. So I've been a ham ever since, mate. And it's one of the greatest things that I've ever done in my life, Stuart. There you go.
So funny you mentioned Whistler. I was in Whistler last fall.
Yeah.
I took the Rocky Mountaineer out of North Vancouver up through Whistler to Quesnel and over to Jasper.
Beautiful.
What an epic trip! And this year, from what I understand, is the last running of that line. They're shutting down that that line. I think CPR is closing it down. So I'm happy I went on it when I did. But we stayed overnight in Whistler. And we walked around, and my dad is in his 80s, so he went to bed early, and I walked around in the evening. Found the only cigar shop in Whistler. Of course, being in Canada,
I know exactly where that cigar shop is. Yep.
Being in Canada, there's no lounges that we had when I was living in the US that you can go to. You have to go away from people if you want to enjoy the cigars. I said, okay, fair enough. Anyway, my comment was, says, gee, there's a lot of Aussies here in Whistler. I said, that's unbelievable. Everybody I met was from some different part of Australia. And I started, and even when I got to Banff later in the trip, I noticed the same thing. A lot of Australians in Banff. And I lived in Calgary for 20 some odd years and went to Banff occasionally and never picked up on it until I went back last year as a visitor for the first time in, I would say 15 years since I was back there. Yeah, so I just noticed that Whistler is I call it Australian temporary worker heaven, I guess you can call it. They come over there for the hospitality industry, and they
call it I think the nickname is Wistralia, and Australia Day, which is January the 26th, is actually bigger in Whistler than Canada Day. Go figure, hey. But it's like, I get it, and you know what? And Canada is has everything that Australia doesn't, and similarly, Australia has everything that Canada doesn't. The only thing is, I feel like it's a bit of a double standard for the poor Canadian kids, because when they get their second visa to go back to Australia, they have to go and work on a farm, picking fruit, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The Okanagan could certainly. Welcome the Okanagan, and whether they're grape pickers or fruit pickers would welcome that. But second visa for Canadians going back to Australia, they have to go and work on a farm. Whereas the Aussie kids come here, they can just keep renewing, I think, perpetually, and they don't need to do that. So that's my only little gripe, if you will, with the system, that there's a bit of a double standard, and they should make it easier. They probably will, just for the Canadian kids going down to Oz.
Before we get into Parks on the Air, that's how you and I cross paths on Parks on the Air. Tell me, you're a licensed VK as well, correct?
I am VK3BIX. Yep.
Yeah. So tell me, is there any major differences in the license between the Canadian and the Australian, or are they pretty much similar?
Pretty similar. I just got my Aussie license because of proof of previous learning. And then I just had to do basically, it's like almost like an entry exam. And that would mean, I can't remember what it's called, But basically, that would mean if I didn't have proof of previous learning, I wouldn't be able to operate on 20 meters. But because I've got my basic with honours, I get full HF privileges. So pretty much, Stuart, they're pretty much the same. Very, very large 80-meter portion of the band, which is unbelievable. See, I notice when I go back to Australia, a lot of the Aussies, it's converse, right? Or it's the juxtaposed. A lot of the voice is sort of down in the, under 3.7. You know what I mean? And 40 meters, 14.144. And I think that's the WWF there for a lot of guys hang around there. But a lot of the,
I noticed that too here with a lot of I'll call it the American influence. So up here, a lot of Canadian amateurs will operate 40 meters above 7,200 because the American generals can't really, they're 71, 75 and above for their band, but most of them hang out above 7,200. I think 80 meters has got something similar, and 20 meters has something similar as well, and I think 15 as well has a carved out section for generals only in the US. But me personally, every time I go out to do portable, you can find me around 14,170.
I love it.
Because and I have a couple of reasons. One, it's not nearly as congested there as it is on 14,270, for example. I mean, I call a 20 meter band, it's almost like 11 meters battling for space sometimes. So I go down there because it's not nearly as congested. And secondly, I go out to work DX. I don't need to work Bob in New Jersey over and over and over again. Right. So I'm looking for, the other night, sometime last week, I was out calling CQ on 20, usually my 14,166, and I got a Lima United calling me. Oh, and wow. He was booming in. I'm thinking, the short path is open to Argentina from the beach.
Yeah.
No, he says, I'm pointing over Antarctica, so I'm going long path to you. And I'm sitting there jumping up and down like a giddy schoolboy, thinking, woohoo, got Argentina long path. And I've worked Indonesia long path from a park and Australia long path from a park. And to me, Simon, that's the real joy. And I appreciate everybody has their own wants and likes, but for me, the real joy is hearing that Victor Kilo when I'm at a park at 6 o'clock at night calling CQ. And so my buddy Paul, VK3BIX calls me, right?
Oh, Paul,
that to me, that's the joy of this hobby, right?
And it's Victor. It's VIKTA, Victor Kilo 5, Papa Alpha Sierra. Yeah, I love it, right? The Aussie. And when Wes and I are doing, if we share a frequency or we want to check in, we'll use 14.170 and somewhere down there. I love it, Stuart. There's so much room. And I hear you, mate. I'm all about the DX, absolutely.
And some nights when I want to not be bothered by our neighbors to the south, I'll go on 14,145. And that doesn't stop some of them from calling you, but that to me, if I just want a night of working DX, I'll just go on 14,145 and call CQ and work all over Europe from here at the house, right? In the evening.
Well, when you go to Australia, I was there in January, and every afternoon because I was working with this Blaze Aid, this bushfire voluntary organisation. I would just sit there with a beer, play long path to Europe with my ladder antenna or something, and it was always between 14.140 and about 14.19 or 14.2. Never or rarely over 14.2. And that's where I found a lot of the DX long path into Europe typically were. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and over in here on the East Coast, it's a little bit different because you'll get the Kuwaitis here in the summertime pounding in here, the 9 kilo 2s pounding in here, and they're usually in the U.S. General because they want to work the Americans. To them, working the U.S. stations is very it's rewarding to them because they're working from the other side of the world, right? So so they're more in the U.S. General. But anyway, we could split that hair for a long time here. Tell me about Parks on the Air. How did you stumble upon Parks on the Air? What got you interested in that?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll try to keep it short. But living in Whistler, it's HF bankrupt pretty much, unless you get up into the mountains, you get up onto Blackcomb or Whistler, then you can speak to the world. But the Whistler Valley is only about 2,000 feet above sea level. It's pretty much the guys are all on VHF, so repeat up to Pemberton, down to Squamish and perhaps you could, Vancouver, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't really experience much of the pure joy of HF up there until I moved here. I think I can speak on behalf of a lot of hams. I was pretty done with the hobby, VHF, little handheld, and coinciding with living in Whistler, but then moving to Victoria, which is one of the HF meccas of the world, being surrounded with all this salt water and no mountains, and then the inception of POTA was just the perfect storm. And I just can't believe it. It was just like, it's just absolutely, it changed my whole psyche and my whole perception and everything about ham radio. Because then all of a sudden, all of the stuff that was sitting here intrinsically from what I'd learned from my uncle, who was just notoriously cheap about making antennas out of fences and anything, wire, anything that he could find, using little pieces of PVC plumber's pipe, which we'd use for the drinking troughs for the sheep to insulate, like a dipole. All of that stuff all of a sudden came into play for me, Stuart, and it was just an absolute dream come true. So here was this beast, building up momentum called POTA, and here I am living in Victoria. And obsessed with antennas. It just fed my absolute neuroses, and here I am making antennas out of rubbish. So and what I love about it is when you go to the park. See, in Australia, when you go to the park or anywhere, there's a lot of time during the day where the bands are dead. You might speak to 1 or 2 or 5 guys on 40 meters, maybe nothing, or maybe a couple of VK4s or VK2s on 20 meters, but it's not until the long path, when that sort of opens, that everything sort of comes to life. Whereas I could go out to the park right now because of just the critical mass, I guess, of being where I am and exposed to the US to the south, excuse me, and I could put up a rubbish antenna, Stuart, and start calling CQ POTA, and boom, have a massive pileup. And I love it, and it just makes sense. You spot yourself, and I know there's a lot of probably old hams there that were bored with the hobby as well, that are blowing the dust off their old, whatever it was. They got, an old transceiver from the 70s or 80s and go, oh, this is fun. I can just chase POTA guys all day. So there you go. So that's sort of it in a nutshell, if you will.
And I think I told you before we started recording that I'm one park away from 10,000 unique parks.
Yeah.
I hope I get it tonight, but the football match is in 27 minutes. So that's going to take priority, right?
Absolutely. Canada. Yes. And it's the first time Canada's ever, the Canadian team in the FIFA World Cup playing on Canadian soil. It's a big deal, eh? It's fantastic.
Big deal for sure. And, much like your journey is that I took 30 years off ham radio. I got very much involved when I was living in Calgary. I came to Alberta from Manitoba, where I got my license in Manitoba, and came in, and Alberta had this huge, great linking network across the province. The Southern Alberta Repeater Association. We had IPARN back then, which we can really cool. I get on a satellite and get into Vancouver or Toronto on a 2-meter handheld over a satellite. That's really cool. And then life got in the way. Right. My kids were little. I was starting a business and just life got in the way. And it was 30 years later when Missy was sitting there, says, "Can you go get a hobby? Because you're really, getting in my way around the house, right?" So I was on the verge of retiring, although I wasn't fully retired yet. I had the light at the end of the tunnel for retirement was there, and I said, okay, I got to do something. So I said, I got this ham radio thing I did 30 years ago. Let me go see what's going on. And I Googled and I found the Moncton Amateur Radio Club, and I called ISET on the phone and said I was licensed in Alberta 30 years ago. Says, don't worry, your license is still good. It's a license for life. Although you can't keep the VE6 call anymore because you live in New Brunswick. So okay, no problem. Give me a VE9 call. And the rest, the rest is history. I was spinning the dial one day, Simon, and I heard this. It was a young lady calling CQ Parks on the air, and I'm going, "What the heck is this?" Right? Yeah. And I did my first POTA activation January 2nd, 2024, I remember it was brutally cold.
Yeah.
I had one of these fiberglass masks that I bought off of VX Engineering. I put it up and I put an end-fed half wave up, and it worked that day great. I went out the next day to a different park, put it up, and the thing snapped in half because it was so cold. And I said, okay, that's interesting. Let's re-engineer something else. And now, and watching guys like you, Salty Walt, K4OGO, and I'm thinking, you guys are building. I think one of the first videos I watched you is when you built the Yagi out of tent poles, and I said, I want to do that.
Yeah, man.
Because to me, this is just me going out to doing POTA with just a ham stick and sitting in my truck. It's kind of boring.
Oh, it is.
I want to experiment, and I got all kinds of stuff on my desk here, and I like to build stuff, and you can see my videos on my channel. And I want to build. I still haven't built that Yagi, but I want to build that Yagi. I said to myself, I want to do that Yagi. I think I reached out to you right away. I said, can you send me the plans for that? And that got me even hooked even more. But I said, I can go to a park, and the nice thing about the parks here, they're not very busy.
Yeah.
Last night I was on the beach here, although technically not a POTA park. It's part of a bigger POTA area. And I was the only person on the beach for hours.
Love it.
It's a beach attached to a marina and a seafood processing plant. So it's not very busy, but it's a public beach. And I sat out there last night and called CQ for hours and, end up with but I want to build that Yagi still. So that's how I first found out about POTA, was hard as YL calling and dig into more. Then I stumbled upon you, and although Walt's not a POTA guy, K4OGO, and a few others on YouTube. Funny thing about it now, Simon, I hate to admit it on the recording, I don't watch very many POTA YouTube channels anymore. It's funny. Yeah. I don't watch it that much anymore because I said, oh, they're just recording their QSOs. That's kind of boring. What? Show me how to build that. Show me that Yagi, right? Show me that Slinky antenna. Show me something cool, right?
Well, and that's a fabulous segue, because I'm not going to use any names of commercially made products, but so the paradigm was, I'd go out and buy this antenna from this company, put it up, and I didn't know any different because there was not the mania that there has been since POTA, if you know what I mean. And I'd listen, and I'd listen to the nets, and the stations would be very distant and this and that. And I never forget going out for my first POTA activation. And I worked out there. It was at the Fiskard Lighthouse down here in Langford, Colwood area in Victoria. And I remember calling for literally hours to make my 10 contacts, Stuart. And everybody's going, did you only make 10 QSOs? Because you got a good signal, but it was only West Coast. Anyway, my point was that was brand X antenna. I thought, well, bugger this. I'm going to go out there the next day with a simple hand stick. And I want to do a huge shout out to my Elmer and mentor and best mate in the world, Mike Wong, Mike from Burnaby Radio. Love you, Mike. Hope all is well, buddy, because Mike sent me a bunch of antennas, including the ham stick. And this is where I'm going with this. I went out the next day, and it's like, oh, my gosh, I had 50 QSOs in an hour. And it's like, oh, this is what it's meant to be. And then that subsequently led me to, well, hang on a minute. I'm going to start making my own. And that's where the absolute obsession started. And I want to mention a video that I just put out a couple of days ago, or 3 days ago. It's had like 15,000 views on the 43-cent boomerang, if you will, like basically an L, a boomerang quarter wave or halfway wave dipole that I've tapped every foot. And the guys are going crazy for it. And it's just, I don't know, and that just feeds my neuroses and makes me want to make more. And it's just like, oh, I love it, Stuart. And to me, you know what? I think once upon a time, mate, there was a real obsession about building radios. But I think, who can beat the 7300 or the new, the new Yaesu radios, like the new Icom that's coming out. I think it might be like the 705 with 100 watts. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. But who would want to build a radio when you've got that, that technology right in front of you, right? But the obsession for antennas is still there, and I think it's actually with technology. I think it's actually becoming more of an obsession, you know, and our buddy and brother from a different mother, Greg, KJ6ER, he all of his fabulous modeling, you know, that software wasn't around. And DX Commander, Callum, you know, that software probably wasn't around 40 years ago. And we all relied on, you know, these Bibles, which we still do. I love this. But, you know, there's an obsession. And I've got about 5 volumes of this. I just can't get enough of it. So there you go, mate. You know, and I'm not buying antennas. Sorry, commercial guys, I'm not into that, you know.
Well, I will still buy a commercial antenna one day to do what's the last one I bought was the Radioddity HF010.
Yeah.
The only purpose to do a video on it and see if it would actually DX. And it worked, you know what, in all favorite, it worked pretty good. But I also been doing a lot of my videos that are in the editing process now. Says you don't have to spend a bunch of money on antennas anymore. I buy a spool of Amazon speaker wire for $25, a couple of Allens, and I got a DX Commander poles, and how dare me forget KJ6ER on my list of mentors, right? That guy's great, you know. There you go.
But there you go, absolutely. So there's metal tape and there's Ethernet wires. So I say to the guys, hey, guys, go down to the Value Village and buy a mile of this for $5 and you get 8 wires. You know what I mean? It is fantastic. But I will say something else. So if I had a home station, I would buy a commercial antenna. If I'm going to be putting a kilowatt through an antenna in, say, your climate or somewhere that's, you know, a harsh climate, like here we get lots of wind, you want something commercially built, right? And I'm just talking about when I go out and do, you know, stupid activations at the park and shout at people, right? I just make antennas out of rubbish.
I couldn't agree more. I have the K4KO hex beam here at the house on a 40-foot tower, and we took it down about a month or so ago to do. It's been up there for 2 years. We brought it down and we replaced all the grommets and fixed a few things at the weather here. We had some pretty nasty storms this winter, so the weather kind of beat it up a little bit, and so we fixed a few things and tightened bolts and put it back up in the air, right? You know, and you have to do that every few. You know, you just can't put it up and hopefully over 20 years and it stays in place, right? You got to. But yeah, I agree 100%. Commercial antennas at home, if it's a TH3 Yagi or a Cushcraft or pick your model. I kind of want to get a Mosley antenna for my next one. Big TA63 with the 40-meter add-on. But the winds are just really, really strong here in the wintertime. Yeah. So I don't know if I would want. I'm definitely gonna. I have a 40-meter dipole sitting around here in the shack somewhere from Diaz, the Brazilian company. Oh yeah, that I want to build and put up on maybe on a mast or something on one of these crank up tower masts. But definitely I agree with you. I agree with you on portable. I mean, part of my love for radio this summer, Simon, the first 2 years of Parks on the Air was mass park activation accumulation. Right, I got 244 unique parks that I've activated. Wow, that was the goal for the first 2 years, right? Drive 3 hours and go play radio in a park for a couple, or drive 3 hours at 10 parks in one area, right? Yeah. The price of fuel and stuff is kind of it, and you know, in all fairness, it's almost like they've been there, done that, right? No, hats off to the guys still doing it, those guys getting in and doing it for the first time. As you mature in this hobby and your portable stuff, you'll figure out what really excites. And this year, it's about building stuff in the shack and taking the salty wall 17.5 and 10 out to the beach one night and do that. Next one, it might be the KJ. What I want to do next is the KJ6ER Performer with a reflector and a driven element and a director. So doing a three POTA, the POTA Performer. It's not really called the POTA Performer, but the 3 Performer in a reflector and a director and a driven element, and see how well that does. And see if I can get you like a schoolboy with the DX coming in on that one.
Oh, I love it, buddy. I love it. And it's, you know, and it's you're right. It's about getting out and doing new things and having fun. And the thing that I'm most excited about this summer, and I can't wait. I've just got to time it with family and this and that. is I'm going to get on my e-bike, and I live in the city of Victoria, by the way, guys. So I'm the most further southwest of Canada, and I'm about probably an hour and a half to 2 hours biking on an e-bike from the ferry. So you know where I'm going with this, Stuart. So what I want to do is ride my e-bike with the two 17-foot whips that I've got mounted on the tray of my e-bike, ride to the ferry, jump on the ferry, flip a coin. Am I going to Salt Spring, or am I going to Galliano, or am I going to Gabriola? Ride there, then ride around the island with the 857 and a 20 amp hour battery, and just do a POTA rove on my e-bike, and then go to the pub, plug the bike into the charger, have a couple of beers, and then get the ferry home and film it all. I can't wait. It just really excites me. New adventures, and just go and ride into parks and just do different things. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, love it.
And you're a YouTuber as well, so when you get this, I find that when I do stuff like that, the viewers go up crazy. You know, my worst performing videos are when I just go to a park and sit there and record 50 QSOs. Yes, it's exciting for the people that are on it, but for the people that are just watching, yeah, I said, like I said, been there, done that, right?
And then if you do videos on that, you know, and it's like you just can't believe the amount of views. And I get it, you know, it's just like, and especially with you know, just with inflation and everything, the cost of materials. You know, it's we're all looking for ways to build antennas for cheap, Stuart, and it's a fun challenge. You know what I mean? And as Mike from Burnaby Radio says, if it's resonant somewhere, and I really like to really convey this message. If you can find where it's resonant, if it's resonant somewhere, the antenna is going to work. That just simply means, you know, now that's within reason. If you don't have a good return path for RF, like a good ground plane, you might get the capacity of the RF coupling with things, and you get like a false little dip at 9 megahertz. But if you've got a good return path and you've got both sides of the antenna and it's resonant at say 11 or 12 megahertz or 19 megahertz, you know, okay, I need to shorten that or lengthen it, and that's the part that excites me. And then when you nail it, I mean, it's the greatest. It's a great feeling that I did that out of my own two hands. It's rubbish, and if you can make contacts from something you made, it's I don't know, it's pretty rewarding, mate. I tell you.
Yeah, it was like that night when I was telling you about the Long Path Argentina contact, and after thinking about that, I went, wow, this guy contacted me long path from Argentina on something I built. Exactly. And you can't put a value on that. And when I first moved to Canada, I was obsessed with fishing, absolutely obsessed. And when the salmon run was happening, I would go up into Chilliwack and the Veta River, and I caught these monster salmon on, you know, they were 40, 50 pounds. And the meat had turned white on them. They weren't as great to eat, but I didn't know. But I was catching them on my own flies that I made. You know what I mean? And that felt really good as well. It's like there's something pretty special about that. If you can speak to somebody, you know, like as you say, long path on an antenna that you made, Stuart, you can't put a value on that. You know? Exactly. Now, I was supposed to have our good friend Wes on this channel a couple of days ago, but at the last minute, he jammed out, citing something about his 50th birthday coming up.
He was a big 50 yesterday. So
I know. Happy birthday, Wes.
Happy birthday, mate. Oh, I love it.
One of the we are going to reschedule with Wes, but one of the things I like about Wes, and another YouTuber that I got interested in the early days, first off, because he's Canadian. I always have a special place in my heart for Canadian content, and here's this, as my good friend Mike VA3MZD says, here's another crazy bugger in the winter time in Saskatchewan, loading up a barbecue and talking on the radio. Like, you know, I've often thought about doing stuff like that, but why? You guys are already doing it. You know, why should I do it? But tell me, what's the secret to loading up a barbecue? Like, I'm thinking in my mind, I got an idea how it works, but obviously you got the the positive and the negative side of the ballon or running, whatever you're using, right? You know, are you loading? Tell me how you make that work.
Well, okay, that's a really good point. So, when I first started this series that I'm doing called the Rubbish Antenna series, I thought, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to throw a ladder up in the tree and light that up, and that becomes an antenna. I've even used a saxophone, trumpets, all that sort of stuff. But after a while, it becomes a gimmick, and it's not really quote unquote sustainable, or something that that really sort of has longevity, if you will. And I remember, Mike, I'm just going to digress for a second. When I first sort of learned a bit about ham radio, and I was all obsessed about the vertical. Oh, yeah, got the greatest vertical. And I said, I don't know about counterpoises. And Mike said to me, look, just think of it as the other half of the antenna. And as soon as he did that, that was the paradigm. It's like, oh, okay. And I've actually become more obsessed with the other part, or the other side of the antenna. And basically, it means that the better ground plane, or ground plane that you have, the better RF return path you have. So that's why. So hence the obsession with the Rubbish Antenna series about lighting up things like a barbecue, for example, like putting up. I try to keep things objective, or keep things apples to apples. Like put the 18-foot whip up, and then let's go and connect different ground sides or counterpoises of the antenna, and see what gets the best dip of SWR, and compare it to compare apples to apples, and say, well, I did the barbecue. My barbecue was not a good ground plane, so that to me tells me that it wasn't bonded very well. There's certain big bolts that I've got in my fence that work surprisingly well. So that to me is the obsession. So that so it all gets back to my emergency preparedness, and that if you're one of my long-term objectives and goals, Stuart, is to go back to Australia and to educate farmers about, look, when all hell breaks loose and you need to be calling Mayday, because let's face it, a lot of the farmers in the hills, they have VHF radios. So what? You can speak to the guy 1-2 kilometres away if you're lucky. So what? You need to be able to get HF and to be able to speak to somebody 50, 100, 200, 500 kilometres away, and show them about how to be able to turn rubbish into something that perhaps could save a life. And it's not necessarily the driven element, if you will, or the radiating element. It's about the other side of the antenna. Okay, I've got the 18-foot width from AliExpress. What can I clamp it onto? What's metal? How can I get a good RF return path to make this antenna efficient and work? You know what I mean? And that to me has sort of started the obsession. Yeah.
I got it. Understood now, 100%. So we only got a few minutes left before the big soccer match here. So we'll kind of start wrapping up. So Simon, I always ask this question of everybody I have on the program. Where do you see ham radio going in the next 5 to 10 years? If you had a crystal ball and it was working perfectly, where do you see our great hobby going?
Well, I think in North America, I think it's booming. I think it's going great. I worry about Australia because I feel like it's behind a paywall. And I know Hayden, Ham Radio DX, is doing wonderful work down there with the WIA and whatever the institution down there. But I still think in Australia, it's very institutionalized. You have to do a practical part of the exam. Whereas here in North America, it's basically it's basically open source. And if you've got a photographic memory, you can remember the questions and answers. And I actually, to be honest, I like that. I like the low barrier of entry. And I know a lot of the viewers out there are going to go, oh, no. But I like a low barrier of entry. Get people into the hobby, because the real learning is when you all of a sudden, that's when you start getting obsessed with antennas. I didn't know anything when I did the exam compared to what I know now. So in line with that, I do think that ham radio is just on the up and up, Stuart. I think the gatekeepers have to take a step back, and that nothing's forever. It's like jazz music. There's always the hardcore traditionalists that don't like progression, right? And things sort of, moving forward. But I would like to think that ham radio is on the up and up. What's your take on it?
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. I would like to see from a licensing perspective. I agree 100%. The low barrier to entry to like a basic with honors type. You know how Canada we have it. If you get, I think it's what 80% and below, you get basic, and 80% and above it's basic with honors. And the honor, and I was basic with honors for a long time. I was just last year I upgraded to advanced. You know, after 30 some odd years. They didn't call it basic with honors back when I first got licensed. That came in when I was on my break. But I would like to see that low barrier. And I'm a big no code fan. The best thing they did was get rid of the Morse code requirement, because that just opened up the hobby to so many more people. Now there's going to be some old grouchies that are going to see differently, but that's okay. They're entitled to their viewpoints. But I would like to see, once you get your basic ticket, some sort of, I'll call it a practical experience where you have to, kind of like what Australia does with the practicum kind of idea. Yep. You have to get your advanced, you have to show some period of time, a year, 2 years, whatever length of period of operating, you know, and learning, right? So you can do it. There is a written test, but there's also demonstration of competence, right? Yeah. And sure, that will open up more opportunity for you to run more power or get run remote or sponsor a repeater. I think some combination of both would be good. But again, as Dave Goodwin says, VA3KG, the ham radio hobby in Canada is growing at 2% per year, which is faster than our national citizenship rate, which is only 1% per year. So
that's right. And because let's face it, which is a great thing, we're all living longer. So compounded, that's a huge number. You know what I mean? You know, so once you're a ham, you're always going to be a ham. And Stuart, that's another reason why I think a lot of people that watch my rubbish antenna series are people that are going, oh my gosh, I can do that. Maybe I should become a ham. And I am all about the masses. My grandfather used to say, what is it? Sell to the classes. Yeah, sell to the classes, live with the masses. Sell to the masses, live with the classes. And there's a bit of truth to that. And I'm not talking about financial gain, but just all I want to do, guys, is I want to get people into this beautiful hobby because it just lights me up. It's just the greatest thing ever. And I want there to be that bureaucratic firewall, if you will, to that people go, oh, I'm afraid. And then there's the clubs, and I don't want to get into the clubs. I don't even belong to a club. You know, I'm a free spirit. I just want to go and play radio. You know,
you and me both. My friend Gunther, DK5ONV, another great portable guy. Uncle Gunther says he's a lone wolf, and I'm a lone wolf as well. I find the ones that have the most enjoyment of the hobby are the ones that are not associated with the bureaucracy of ham radio.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, Steele, before we go, can I just tell a quick story about the World Cup?
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it. All
right, guys. So here's a funny one. So 2006, my wife and I, we looked up Rick Steves. If you don't know who Rick Steves is, you should, because he's great. And we went to one of the 4-star Colosseums in Verona in Italy, and the year was 2006. And my wife is a percussionist with the Vancouver Opera, and she's played all of the operas. And this particular night, it's very, very poignant. They were doing Aida. Da, 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 da. The full moon was coming up, and it was the night of the final of the World Cup, and Italy were in it. And they made this sort of, fake pyramid, and the moon's coming up. And you could see all of the percussionists all had their earpieces in, listening to the soccer, because we had the binoculars watching them from our back seats in the Colosseum. And the maestro was about to bring out the elephants and the horses, and opera fans out there that know Aida know when they bring the animals out. And he all of a sudden said, cut, because all of a sudden there were fireworks going off, and we heard, Italia, 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 and the fireworks going off, because I worried there was going to be a stampede with all of the animals. And they called the opera right in the middle of it because Italy won the World Cup. And I'll never forget that moment, walking out into the Verona stadium, or piazza, if you will. And there must have been 50 to 100,000 people there, and it was the night that Italy won the World Cup. A once-in-a-lifetime experience, right? We didn't even know that it would coincide, right? So there you go.
Also, kind of reminds me of my story in 1982. Similar type idea, but not to a grand scheme. I was in Niagara Falls, Ontario, and the street I lived on as a boy, we were the only English family. All the rest were Italians.
Oh, I love it.
So that was 1982. The Italians won the World Cup. And,
beautiful.
I remember Paolo Rossi. That's the one name I remember from 1982. Yeah. And that year, the Italians won the World Cup. I remember I was an honorary Italian for a day, driving around with the Italian flag, waving on the back of the car, and just having a great old time. I want to so although I'm a Canadian and I'm going to cheer on Canada, and Scotland has never had a good World Cup team, and I don't even think they've been in the World Cup for decades, right? My heart still, and I'm 50% English too. So my mother was English, my father was Scottish. So my other half of my heart is still committed to England. And I always want to see England do well, although they've been rubbish the last few World Cups. I think the last one they did better, but they've been rubbish the last several World Cups. But I'm always going to cheer on England no matter what. And of course, Canada's been playing. They played really well the last World Cup. So hope they can repeat that. You know, I don't think they're going to make it anywhere close to the finals, but if they can make it to the 16 or 8, that would be wonderful.
They've got a pretty, I won't say quote unquote nothing easy, but they've got a good. And me, Canada is my home, but as Peter Allen says, and he used to sing it, right? Beautiful. I still call Australia home. So I pledge my allegiance, of course, to Australia. So the Aussies are playing tomorrow night against Turkey, and so it's great. And Australia also, they've got the US, which is going to be tough. They've got Paraguay and they've got Turkey. And I think who Canada got? They're playing Bosnia today. And who else is in
before? It's Switzerland.
Yes.
And I can't remember who the fourth one is.
Yeah, mate, I think it's a Latin American team. But anyway, it's great, mate. Let's go and watch the soccer. And you are just the greatest, Stuart. Charlie Foxtrot.
And maybe the Socceroos will do well this year too. You never know.
Absolutely. Well, mate, thank you so much for having me on, buddy. You're an absolute champion. I love you. I love your channel, and I love everything about what you do. And I can't wait to meet up and have a beer next time you're back west, mate, or I'm back east.
I look forward to it. I'll be in Alberta this summer, so although I'm not going to make it to BC, I'm going to be in Alberta this summer. So my youngest son is getting married, so I gotta head out there for that. Anyway, hey, Simon, thanks for doing this, buddy. I really appreciate it. We got to go watch some football. So let's go do that. And I'll say 7-3 from the East Coast of Canada to the West Coast of Canada. We'll see you guys on the next video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And Simon, before we go, just give a little plug for your channel before we go.
Yes, Ham Jazz is my channel, and I love to make antennas out of rubbish. And well, yeah, that's it, everybody. So thank you so much. And again, Stuart, thanks for your time and everything you do for Ham Radio, mate. You're an absolute legend.
See you later, buddy. Good to talking to you, and I'll see you all in the next video, whenever that will be. I don't know when, but it'll be sometime soon on some topic. We'll see what it is. 7-3, everyone.
See ya. Bye.